Blake, there's a good reason why a lot of mountain bikers switch to tubeless tyres.
Nah, but there is advantage of running tubes in your bike.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, I think this was a standoff. Tubes versus...
Tubeless. Today I'm riding my Canyon Spectral 150mm trail bike in my sort of standard setup. I've got the Vittoria Mazza trail tyres, so the mid-weight tyre, not the heavier, more durable enduro tyre. So this is my standard setup. On FSA gradient wheels, these are the carbon rims, wider ones, that's quite important. And my pressures, standard for me, 28 PSI in the rear, 26 up front. If you're changing to tubeless, there's a few things you're gonna need. You're gonna need a tubeless ready tyre, some tape to go around your rim to seal the spoke holes, a valve, and some sealant. There is a little bit of a learning curve if you're new to tubeless tyres to get them set up right and to make sure that your tyres are sealing. It can be frustrating if you're pumping away and the tyre is just leaking air all over the place. But most tyres nowadays seal really easily. And once you've done it a few times, you'll get the knack of it and it's definitely worthwhile learning.
I'm riding my Orbea Occam LT, aka OJ. There's 150mm of travel, front and rear, and I'm running tubes in the front and in the rear. And they are in some Spank 359 on the rear, and on the front is a 350. The tyres I'm running are Vittoria Mazza 2.4 Trail. So it's a lightweight tyre, a bit like Neil. Running tubes is pretty self-explanatory, and it's easy and less faff, and it is cheap. Basically, you take your tyre off, you insert your tube into it, put your tyre back on, and inflate. Voila, no dirty hands, no faff. Oh, and I've got a spare one right here, just in case. When I'm out riding my bike and I get a little bit of a puncture situation going on, I do have an inner tube on my bike, so I don't have to faff and try and patch this one. I can just swap them round, and when I get home, I can patch it. But if I don't have an inner tube, I do carry around a puncture repair kit and a pump and some bits and bobs, so I can actually fix the inner tube that I did puncture. But it's pretty cheap. You can get these cheap, and you get little patches. They come in all shapes and sizes, depending on the size of the puncture you get.
Whereas I don't get those same little punctures from things like thorns that Blake does. Tubeless just takes those away because your sealant, that's what it's there for, fills those little holes. So I could be a bit smug, especially when we're in a place like Spain where the thorns are really gnarly. Blake might find that out later. But I still do need to carry some stuff, especially for longer rides, to fix my tyres. So you can get these tubeless repair kits. This is a very snazzy one from Toe Peak, where I've got my plugs in this end with a sort of spiky thing, not sure what's actually called, to put those plugs into the holes. And this end, I've got a CO2 canister I can stick on there to fire it back up. These things do last really well. Sometimes they last the lifetime of the tyre, but you will need to repair your tubeless tyres sometimes out on the trail as well. However, the smugness rubs off slightly because I still really do need to carry a spare tube. There are times when you can't fill that gap. And actually, there are times when I've had to use something like a gel wrap or bits of rubbish to just sort of patch the inside of the tyre so it doesn't just open up and let my tube come out. So the disadvantages are I have to carry a tubeless repair kit as well as a spare tube. The advantages of a tubeless setup, well, number one is you can run them at lower pressures if you want. I know the cross-country riders and racers take big advantage of that, run them less than 20 PSI. It does a really good job of damping all the little bumps in the trail, but apparently they also roll faster because rather than getting pinged upwards on every little bump, they just move that way better.
The advantages of running a tube in your bike is you don't burp, so you don't lose pressure. Also, you don't need all those fiddly little tools to repair a puncture in your tyre. You can buy a tube anywhere and they're super cheap.
Disadvantages of tubeless, well, they're more expensive to begin with. They're a bit messy, there's a bit of learning how to get them set up nicely, and you've got to fix your tyres still. No tubes, but sometimes you've got to fix your tyres.
The disadvantage of running a tube tyre is that you're more prone to punctures. Everything under the sun, thorns, rocks, sharp edges, anything is going to get a puncture in your tyre. Now, if you're running an aggressive setup on your bike, like a downhill casing tire and a downhill casing any tube, the rubber's gonna be a lot thicker, which is gonna make it a hell of a lot heavier in your bike.
Right, well, I am tubeless 100% of the time on a mountain bike. Blake, you're running tubes today. You're gonna stick with that on your trail bike?
100%, no, I'm tubeless through and through on my trail bike.
Yeah.
But I'm not 100% tubeless. My jump bike, I run tubes there because of higher tire pressures.
And free riders, like the guys riding Rampage, they run tubes. Why is that?
More support in a tire, because if you're running a tubeless setup, you can't get a really high pressure in because you're prone to bursting it off the rim.
Ah, right.
So the tube gives it more support, less squirm.
Yeah.
And also, when you jump, the rotational force with sealant within your tire gives it that funny bob.
I felt like if you have too much sealant,
Yeah.
you get like a boom, boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom. But yeah, you have to have quite a lot in probably to see that. Another big advantage of tubeless is you've got a greater range of tyre pressures that you can run. I mean, you can really tune your bike to the trails you're riding.
For the tube setup, you're going to run a higher tire pressure if you're going to be riding aggressively, and also to avoid those pinch flats.
There you go, tubeless is victorious.
Victorious.
Victorious. Also, I've got fancy carbon wheels. You just can't put tubes in carbon wheels.
No, that's just,
Come on.
That's just sacrilege.
Sacrilege, yeah.
Sacrilege.
Yeah,
Is that
it is.
We had some fun, burping and squirming and skidding everywhere.
I'm fighting.
Had fun. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let us know if you run tubes or...
Tubeless.
See ya.